29, 1991, at the same day as a canoeist found body parts of a missing 14-year-old girl encased in cement at the bottom of the Lake Gibson, the dream wedding was happening on the other side of the town. The wedding was perfect, like Disney princess inspired. The couple was gorgeous. They looked like they were made for each other, and they were so pretty that people started calling them Barbie and Ken. They just had no idea that this couple was gonna become a deadly weapon. Hello guys, how are you today? I'm Avla G. You are in my channel SPOOKYavy, and obviously you can call me Avy. If you like true crime, conspiracy theories, supernatural, you are in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe, to give a like, to share to people that you know that like the same kind of content. I promise you, and now is a pingo swear, that from now on, I'm gonna post 2 to 3 videos a week. After my first one, I had some personal problems, including finding my biological family, which is gonna be a subject for another video because it's a really crazy story. But from now on, it's really gonna happen, and I count with you guys to help me out. It's a new channel, and your help is gonna be really important. Also comment down below what you think about this case and the next one that you want me to talk about, okay? And just a reminder, I have no meaning whatsoever of offending the victims and their families. I'm here only to tell the stories so they don't get forgotten in the past. People need to know what happened and what happens now so they can try to prevent other kinds of crimes. With all that said, let's go to the video.
You're bad.
Yeah, you're bad. If I didn't say the right thing, he'd hit me. He held knives to my throat. He told me I better watch my back.
I guess he goes to hell like sex slaves.
I want him to rot in jail because dying's too good for him.
June 29, 1991. So as I said, this canoeist was just like having his time, enjoying the weather, the day, in the Lake Gibson, when suddenly he came across something that he could never imagine in his life. There was cement blocks just involving parts of a teenage body. And unfortunately, that was gonna be the end of a mystery that was going through the town for the whole week already. The disappearance of Leslie Mahaffey. Leslie Mahaffey came from a really good family. She was an extremely nice kid. She had good values. She was gorgeous and smart. She was like friends with everybody in the school. And every day she made her way to home, and she always had this curfew that her parents imposed to her. So if she arrived home after curfew, or she had to enter with her own keys, or in the case she forgot the keys, which was really rare, she would just like ring the doorbell and get the consequences for being late. On this occasion, Leslie and her friends were mourning a death of a close friend. So she ended up losing the curfew time, and when she got home, the door was locked, and for some reason that we will never know, she didn't have her key, and she decided to not ring the doorbell. Right after that, she just went completely missing. And it was a town in Canada that it was pretty secure. Until that moment, nobody was ever like pretty worried about the kids' whereabouts and stuff. Like, it was a safe place until then. At the same day, Karla and Paul were getting married in this dream wedding. So who was Karla? Let's go back a few years and I'm gonna tell her story. Karla was from a small city in Canada. She was the oldest of 3 siblings. And she, growing up, was like, well, we see in the movies, like the biggest popular girl. Blonde, blue eyes, perfect body, the cheerleader type. She grew up having a bunch of boyfriends or people that wanted to be her boyfriends. Until a time that she went from this like a perfect girl to this, what her friends called bizarre girl. Because she started getting into the occult, into death. She started just like wearing dark clothes and everything else. So everybody started saying like, what the heck is happening with this girl? But still, she kept like going from one character to another, so people didn't think much about that. When she was 17 years old, she was working part-time at this animal clinic, kind of a vet clinic, because her dream was becoming a veterinarian. In October 17th, 1987, Karla was in Scarborough, Canada. She was invited along with another young girl by the main people from the animal clinic she worked to this conference. There was about like the pet products. It was basically from all their sponsors. So like they were really excited. The older people decided to get a room, and the two young girls, Karla and the other one, they got another room. At some point in the night, Karla and her friend, they sneaked down from the bedroom with nobody seeing, and they went to the bar. When she arrived at this bar, she was there like just like having a drink, having fun, when suddenly she saw He was Paul getting into the bar. He was also in the same hotel, but in another kind of conference. People that were there said that immediately they locked eyes, and it was like love at first sight. They started talking, drinking. Soon enough, they were already making out, and they spent the night together. From that day on, they couldn't get enough of each other. They kept bragging to their friends how much they were so amazing. Like Karla would say, "Oh my God, he's so gorgeous, he's so handsome, he's the man of my dreams," because he kind of like checked all the boxes she wanted. She was from a small town. She wanted to get married early with a guy slightly older than her, which matches because Paul at the time was 23. He was in finances, so he was gonna be able to like provide a good life for her, like lifestyle. She wanted like this big ring on her hand, so like he was checking all the boxes, plus he was handsome. He was the kind of guy that everybody would turn the neck to just have a sight again. So from that moment on, they never stopped being with each other. At the same year, 1987, Scarborough was living a nightmare. A sexual criminal, a sexual predator was loose on the streets. By May of that year, 7 different attack reports were made. All of them women in their household, basically, like they were like at the garden or something. They were attacked by behind, so they had no chance to see the face of the abuser. Also, all the time, he was abusing and torturing them. He would say, "Shh, be quiet, because if anybody inside your house hears you or the neighbors, I'm gonna kill you and your whole family." So they were scared. So they just obeyed the orders so he can finish what he was doing and they could be set free. At this point, the whole media was into it. The police had many task forces trying to figure shit out, trying to figure out who this guy was. And in the meanwhile, they are asking women to be careful, to not walk by themselves on the streets, and to also have somebody with them when they are arriving home. The mystery attacker will be known as the Scarborough Rapist, and his attacks were described as horrendous. From May to December of 1987, more 6 attacks happened. In April and May of 1988, more 3. Every time that an attack happened, the degree of violence was bigger and bigger. November and December of the same year, more 4 attacks. The violence kept growing up because he was getting bolder, like catch me if you can vibes. Nobody had a clue who he was. So not only he would sexually assault the victims, but he would make them dress up again, put themselves together, and then he would start the attack all over again. And at the end, they would insert sticks and stones inside the, they was already hurting from the assault. The FBI was finally involved in the case. It was called in, and they did a profile. They definitely said that from the escalating of the violence, at some point he was going to be so bold and it's going to be so boring for him just like doing what he was doing that he's going to evolve to a murderer. In the meanwhile, Karla was kept hostage. No, not the kind of hostage. She was hostage by the love of Paul Bernardo. Who is him again? Paul Bernardo was born in 1964, the youngest of 3 children. Since a kid, he always had this beauty and this like charming smile. He was always like happy and outgoing, but barely people knew that since he was a little kid, he was being verbally, physically, and mentally and emotionally abused by his mother. The family was really rich and everything, but the problem is the mother wasn't happy. And then at some point, she started having an affair. The husband knew at the time, but he played dumb. He's like, I'm not saying anything. He didn't care. And at the same time, she got pregnant. Guess who the kid was? Anywho, the father of the first two children, he was at some point accused and arrested for the abuse of a few children, including his own daughter. The mother was so depressed that she started drinking more, and then she self-isolated her into the basement. Paul's siblings, they were really mad about the whole situation, but Paul was still like having good grades, participating in sports, everything, until that day. Paul's mother got so drunk that she told him that his real father wasn't the one that was in jail. It was her ex-lover. You might think, oh, so he might be happy that his real father is not like a child molester. But no, he went nuts. Especially because from that moment on, she kept calling him as a bastard. That was the moment when Paul's mind started switching. He started sneaking on windows of the neighbors to see if everybody was changing clothes or anything or naked. He started being so creepy that some parents wouldn't let their kids hang out with him again because he was getting too weird. So suddenly, Paul went from this project kid to the weirdo of the block. His compulsion to sneaking in other people's lives and everything started getting weirder and weirder, and his sexual kinks started growing inside him. He wanted to control women. He wanted to torture them. And his life kept being weird until he met Karla and everything changed. As soon as Karla acknowledged Paul's sexual kinks, instead of being weirded out about it, she was like, okay. Yeah, baby. Do anything and everything you want to me. She would write in letters. So she kept like feeding and reinforcing and encouraging Paul's kinks and craziness. And she started getting more and more into it. So what we can see is that actually she always had that side hidden, hibernating, dormant inside her. And Paul was the trigger to wake this side up. In 1990, after 3 years of the horrors of this Scarborough rapist, finally the cops had a break. At this point, the Scarborough abuser was so bold, thinking he was never gonna get caught, that he fucked up. Instead of attacking the victim from behind, he did it from the front. So the very next day, the victim came to the police and helped them to make a sketch. She described him as being this guy next door, handsome, 5'10" to 5'11" of height, nice body, gorgeous, and actually charming. And besides from attacking from the front, the rest of the abuse followed the same pattern of the other victims. After the sketch was released, a bunch of people started doing like, this looks like Paul. And then detectives, the police, started receiving a lot of calls of people saying, hey, that looks like Paul Bernard. He was at some point invited for questioning. He came as nothing was happening. He was calm, charming, polite, and when he was asked for a DNA sample, he gave it immediately. So the cops said, nah, can't be him. And they just set him free. The problem was also that Paul was one of a list of more than 700 suspects. And at that time, the DNA, as we know, the accuracy and how easy it is and how fast, it wasn't like that at all. So like literally the DNA sample stayed into the drawer for a couple years. Yeah. In 1990 also was when Paul got engaged to Karla, so he started making part of the family and engaging with the family more and more. And how can I say that? He started looking for Karla's baby sisters into other kind of eyes. She was only 15 years old. Her name was Tammy. The problem was, Bernard was obsessed with girls that were virgins. And he knew, obviously, that Karla had a few boyfriends before him, so she wasn't a virgin. But she could make it up to him, because Tammy and Karla, you could say that they were twins. The only difference is that they were like 3 years apart or something like that. So it was the only difference. So he started begging Karla to give the virginity of her sister, her baby sister, to him as a gift. And instead of her saying, "Are you fucking crazy, bitch? Get out of my life. Leave." Instead of that, she said, okay. And then she decided to give her baby sister's Tammy's virginity for her fiancé, Paul Bernardo, as a Christmas gift. So at that night, they were all partying together, the whole family, they were engaging. When everybody else went to sleep, Paul and Karla said, "Hey Tammy, do you wanna hang out with us a little bit? Like have some drinks?" And come on, which teenager is gonna say no for like alcohol? Yeah, with my big sister and my brother-in-law, why not? They got her drunk to a point where she passed out. In the meanwhile, a little before that, Karla, she had got some strong anesthetics from the clinic she used to work, in the vet clinic. So after her sister passed out, she also went there and put the anesthetic on her nose and mouth. So she was literally off. Both of them had sexual intercourse with Tammy. Both of them abused her. And they were so off that it took too long for them to realize that she was cold and blue. Tammy choked in her own vomit, and they didn't notice until it was too late. They called 911, they woke up everybody in the house, and they came with this made-up story that she got drunk and everybody was sleeping, and then it was an accident because she choked on herself. They never told, at least at this time, what really happened. The months went by. Karla and Paul, they were extremely good actors. Like, fuck Hollywood, what is wrong with you? You lost 2 great actors. Because during the funeral of Tammy, they were crying and they were desperate. Months were going by and they were still mourning, pretending they were all so upset. But at some point, getting closer to the date of the wedding, of Karla's wedding, she was like, fuck everybody. Enough mourning. Pay attention to me now. I'm the star now. Excuse me. She's gone. But I'm alive. And it's my fucking wedding. So from now on, everybody, you look at me. We pay attention in me. We do things for me. And there was not much that people could do. So the dream wedding day arrived. Karla was always super big into like a Disney princess. And their wedding had even like this car ride. I think that's how it's called, my bad if it's not, but the ones that had like the horses and everything. Like, it was a beautiful thing. And well, Paul, he agreed with everything because he liked to pose as like the biggest and the best. So he wanted the fancy. He wanted like the people to look and say, you know? And not to mention that the couple itself, they look amazing together. No wonder they were called the Barbie and Ken. And while this whole party was happening, 8 blocks of cement with 8 body parts of Leslie Mahaffey were found in the lake. What happened was, do you think that after Tammy, Paul's fetish and desire for younger virgin girls had vanished? So at that night that Leslie lost her curfew and she didn't have her keys, Paul was hunting and he saw her and he was charming and handsome. He didn't look like a stranger danger vibe, you know? He decided to abduct her, took her home, he took her to the basement, went upstairs, he let Karla know, hey, don't worry, there's a girl downstairs, but you can be okay, don't worry at all about it. And Karla was like, okay. At the end of the day, she ended up getting really mad about the situation, but not because her husband was raping another girl in her roof, but because when she woke up, she saw the 2 glasses that they both shared in their wedding, and she noticed that Leslie used one of the glasses. So like, raping her, it's okay. Using my glass? Fuck no. Poor Leslie was held captive for 36 hours. She was tortured, assaulted, humiliated. She had to tell Paul that he was the king, and then she loved him and anything you can imagine. Theoretically, and I'm gonna say that right now because you're gonna understand it in the end. Theoretically, after he was done with her, Paul suffocated and killed her because they were expecting Karla's parents for the Sunday's dinner. Sunday came. Literally, Paul and Karla, they were acting like there wasn't a dead body of a girl they tortured and abused for 36 hours in their basement. And Karla would keep going downstairs and upstairs to get ingredients for the dinner, and she was acting completely normal. The only time that she freaked out a little bit was when her mother said, "Hey, I'm gonna go there." "No, Mom, don't worry about it. I got it. I will take care of this for you." And she went there and she took care of it. Because imagine her mom going down there and finding a dead body. The next day after dinner, Paul decided to play Dexter. Have you ever watched Dexter? The TV show? If you haven't, you should, because it's great. But anyways, he got inspired by it and he just like put plastic all over. He got a chainsaw and he dismembered Leslie. They got these cement bags that Karla bought in a place nearby the house and put the body parts there and threw in the lake afterwards. Even knowing that this at this point was a high-profile investigation, Paul wasn't scared at all. So he went hunting again. But this time with nobody else than his own wife, Karla. They were together hunting in daylight, and then they saw this girl coming from school. They stopped, even though everybody was a little like afraid of sketchy of anything. Come on. A woman came out of the car with a map, pretending she was lost. So like this girl called Kristen French decided to, on April 16th, 1992, help Karla because she felt sorry for this other woman that was just lost with her husband. She was just coming from school. She was stopped like, it was like just like a 15 walk to her house. So it wasn't a problem, right? It was like everybody was seeing, everybody on her way from school to home knew her. So she didn't think it was gonna be a big deal. But while she was talking to Karla, Paul came from behind her. He grabbed her and he put her in the trunk. The problem was, there was a lot of eyewitness to that. It's like daylight. This abduction, the fact that she went missing got immediately attention because, like, as I said, it was just a 15 minutes walk from the school to home and she was never late. She was extremely responsible at the time that she had to be home because she needed to feed and walk her dog. Even though with the eyewitnesses and everything, nobody could find her at that moment, and she also was held captive for 36 hours. One thing that these two psychos were also doing was videotaping each and every one of their attacks. It was kind of like homemade porn movie where they were the staring stars. You know, cuckoo! The autopsy record of Kristen French showed that, like the other victims, she was forced to use drugs, to ingest large amounts of alcohol. She was tortured, she was beat up. So those girls, they suffered a lot. There was a little space of time where Kristen saw the possibility of escaping. Paul Bernardo asked what she wanted to eat. And then she was smart and she knew a lot about the city. So she asked for something that was really far away from the house, as far as her brain like pictured the map of the city and where she could be. So it was for a while just her and Karla until this part of the story, as we knew. She and Karla spent about 30 minutes together. She begged Karla to go. Karla said no. Paul Bernardo came back, and because she theoretically saw their faces, she couldn't stay alive. So Paul strangled her, and then together they gave a bath on the dead body. They scrubbed her, they cut her hair, and then they just dumped her. They dumped her body beside the country lane. When her body was discovered, it was when like everybody went nuts. Everybody was on high alert, and it's so horrible to think that they didn't realize at the time that all these rapes from this Scarborough rapist happened in Scarborough when Paul was living there, and they stopped when Paul and Karla got married, moved to this other city, and then suddenly in this city people started dying. Same pattern, but now escalated to death. Anyways, the perfect marriage apparently wasn't that perfect anymore. Paul started closing himself in his own world, and he started being extremely verbally, psychologically, emotionally, and physically abused to Karla. The violence they started putting on her was so bad and became so bad and kept escalating until the day that she was completely beat up with some ribs broken. That's when she ran away and went to the cops to tell on him. By the time that she started pressing charges against her husband, the DNA from the Scarborough rapist came back. Guess what? Such a surprise. It matched perfectly with Paul Bernardo's DNA. At the police station, during her testimony, Karla said that during their honeymoon, he got drunk and he admitted that he was the Scarborough rapist himself. With that and everything else that Karla told the cops, on February 17th, 1993, Paul Bernardo was detained and arrested. And this time, he wasn't the charismatic and polite guy. He just said, "I am tell you guys, Jack." Why, I'm not surprised. This was exactly 8 days later after his wife snitched on him and accused him of murder. During this whole mess, Karla was living with her parents and she got a lawyer for her. During her testimonies, she was playing like the battered women. Do you know what that is? Is the kind of woman that she doesn't have any liberty, she can't work, she can't make her own money. The husband abused her verbally, emotionally, psychologically, any kinds of ways, and she just needs to do what she needs to do to keep alive, or the minimum safe as she can. With that said, because she also told that he was responsible for Leslie and Kristen murders, she made a deal with the prosecution. She would get a 12-year-old sentence to be the star witness for the trial, because they didn't have a lot of proofs that he was the one that murdered, but they have her testimony against him. And they really needed her because forensics turned their house upside down and they found nothing that could link him to the murders of the two girls. What started really messing up with the cops' head is that when the forensics took her there to do the reconstitution of stuff, she was like, "Oh, where's my furniture? I had something here and it's not here and it was expensive. I want it back." And then she went to the bathroom and said, "I had some perfumes here. I will need those." Serious bitch. As soon as Karla started paying for her 12-year sentence, she filed immediately for divorce. On 1995, Paul's trial started and he pleaded not guilty for the murder of Kristen and Leslie. There was a huge mistake that shocked everybody, and the responsibility is totally in one person, Ken Murray, so far Paul's defense attorney. In 100 days that the forensics were in the house, they turned it upside down and I couldn't find the so-called lost tapes, the videotapes of everything that happened. Paul told his lawyer where he was. Right after the forensics left the house, the defense lawyers were able to go in, and Paul made a little map to show them where they were. In the bathroom, in the rooftop, there was this thing that he would push to the side, and then if you put your hands a little over there, you find this little package with 6 tapes. Problem was, fucking Murray decided to hide these tapes for 15 fucking months why is that a problem? Because if those tapes were released before, the prosecution wouldn't need to make a deal with Karla because they had the proof that she was never a battered woman. She was an accomplice to murder. She was the manipulator. She was the head behind the whole operation. And all of this came up. He was taken out. He gave up. He wasn't in the case anymore. And then this other lawyer called Mr. Murder, because he had been the defense attorney for over 300 bad guys. And when I say bad guys, it's like over 300 guys that were murderers. His name was John Rosen. John Rosen took over Paul's case, and he noticed that not only the tapes showed how involved Karla was into everything that was happening, including in the death of her own sister, but there is also one more crime, and we're gonna call the victim Jane Doe. Jane Doe is usually the name that we give to victims that don't wanna expose their real identity. She used to be Karla's best friend kind of thing, and she came there to their house twice. She was drugged and raped, and nothing ever came out about that. Anyway, when Mr. Murder took Paul's case, he knew that with the tapes, they could go for something else. They couldn't go for kidnapping, for abduction, for keeping a hostage, for torturing, sexual assault, and so many other things, but they could try to plead not guilty of murder. Tapes showed that definitely Karla wasn't this battered woman. She had her own job, she had her own bank account, she would go out with her friends, she would go to these mini trips to Florida and whatever else with her girlfriends. A better woman doesn't have this freedom. It's not like that. Plus you could see the real Karla in the videos. In these videos, you could see that Paul was the dummy pretty guy that thought that because he was charming, he could get away with anything. And Karla was the practical one that knew that she had to clean everything, to not leave anything behind. She was the mastermind. The tapes had such a sensible material that only like the jury and the judge were able to watch. Anybody else that was just like watching, they had to have like something covering their eyes, and they would just listen because it was so horrible. A lot of people that worked in the case suffered from PTSD, from anxiety, depression. A couple of them tried to take their own lives. Like it was horrendous. The tape that was the worst of all, that became known as the fireside chat, was the tape where actually a few weeks after Tammy's death, Karla dressed like her little sister, wore her hair like her, imitated her own voice, and had sex with Paul, pretending to be her little sister, saying how proud she was of him and how proud she was that he was taking the virginity of all these little girls. That was when her true colors came on in front of everybody, and it's when the jury hated her equally or even more than Paul. By the day that Paul took the witness stand, obviously it was like a world sensation, this trial, especially in Canada. So like he came trying to play this baby face, like, oh my god, I'm a poor baby. Mr. Murder knows what he's doing. So he came and said, Paul, did you kill Leslie Mahaffey? Paul said, no. Who did? Karla did. And Paul, did you or did you not kill Kristen French? I did not. Who did it? Karla did. The interrogation with him took only 15 minutes, and boom, that was that. Literally, Paul said that, for example, he never wanted to kill any of the girls. They were like blinded, like they blinded. They didn't know where they were. They didn't know their faces exactly, like they couldn't remember it. He didn't want to kill them. He just want to let them go. But Karla said, she was the one that wanted to kill them, including when he went to get food for Kristen French and her. He stopped to get food, to get some video, to watch some movies later. And when he came home, she was dead. Karla told him that after he left, she asked her to just like loosen up a little bit the choker so she could breathe better. She became bald in this time, and she tried to run away, and then she had to take an action, and she ran after her, and then she choked and killed herself with choking. Like, no. Anyways, when he arrived home, she was dead. Finally, after so many days days of trial, the moment that everybody was waiting arrived. The moment where the accused and the accuser were gonna be face to face in the trial. Karla appeared there wearing extremely pale clothes, like trying to erase herself, but she couldn't count on how smart Mr. Murder was. Mr. Murder came to her with a picture of her sister and said, "Do you know who this is?" She could barely believe it's my sister. Then he pulls up a second picture with her sister in the coffin. He said, "Who is this?" "That's also my sister. And she's dead, isn't it? Are you and that guy over there responsible for that?" Yes. And he did the same with Leslie and Kristen. And the more he pressured her, instead of coming up like easy, she started getting feisty. And that's what brought up again and finally and definitely her true colors. The stronger she got against the defense, the more the jury hated her. With the whole circumstances of the tapes too, what they saw, that she was the mastermind behind the killings. In August 31st, 1995, the jury deliberations day, the trial ended. The jury hated them both, and unfortunately, because of the prior deal made with Karla, they just had Paul in front of them. The deliberation took longer than everybody wanted or expected. It was like 8 in the morning the next day, and they were still there, deliberating. The public opinion hated them so much, they wanna see him hanged, and her as well. Finally, the verdict came. Paul was considered guilty for the following counts: 2 first-degree murders for Leslie and Kristen, kidnapping, 2 counts, forcible confinement, 2 counts, aggravated sexual assault, 2 counts, committing indignity to a body in the case of Kristen, because they washed her body, they violated her body, they cut her hair, and so on. And various related but publicly unnamed charges. Another hearing came a little after to accuse Paul of being the Scarborough rapist and also for the murder of Tammy, Karla's sister. Paul was convicted as an extremely dangerous prisoner. So that would definitely change the future of his life, if he was gonna ever be able to leave the prison on parole or not. After 25 years in jail, he was able for parole, and as fast as he tried to plead for the parole, he was denied. And this has been happening since. Every time he tries to plead a parole, nope, is denied. I think that because he lost his hopes on being free ever again. He also claimed being responsible for other 16 victims. Unfortunately, it didn't happen the same with Karla. Karla only stayed in prison for 12 years, and 2 of those years was for the murder of her sister. So basically, yeah, the life of her sister Tammy was worth 2 years. She learned how to speak French fluently. She was able to get a degree of psychology in Queen's University during the time she was incarcerated. When she was finally released, she moved to this little part in this little town in Canada that are most French people. It's kind of a French village, so she started living there. She got married, surprise, surprise, with the brother of her defense attorney. She had 3 kids. She was able to change her name and start living a regular life for a while. Internet nowadays can be amazing, and people discovered her name, her school kids. And then I imagine how it's gonna be the head of these kids when she actually had to explain to them what have she done, how much bullying and how much hunting these kids are gonna suffer for the rest of her life because of the mistakes of her mother that should be in jail forever. Jane Doe came and said that unfortunately everybody just ignored her. Nobody ever asked her for an interview, nobody asked her for a testimony, and she was possessed because not only Karla was able to get a better degree in a better university than her, but also she helped to pay this university with her taxes. I can't imagine what this women feels every day in her heart, how much she suffers every day. The House of Horrors, that is the house where Leslie and Kristen kept abducted and were tortured, it was completely destroyed. And all the tapes, they were set on fire in somewhere that nobody knows, because their family begged them once every single time that the tapes were viewed by somebody, the victims were victimized again. So I wish that the families can find strength to move on. I really hope that somehow Karla still pays more for it. Didn't wish that her kids did, though. Unfortunately, I think they will. And that's the story of the Barbie and the Can killers. For more content like this and some supernatural shit that is coming soon, don't forget to follow, subscribe, share, like, comment, and everything. Huge kiss for you guys.